So let's talk about how we intend to address some of the newest challenges that we're being faced with. Solving for DoubleClick using Google Ads Data Hub or ADH. It's almost too easy if it were available. Google ADH is a clean room for use in joining first-party data, mates, cookies, anything else you might have with media exposure. Google ADH, it supports impression alignment with display, video, but not paid search. They've never given an official explanation why, and I suppose no one really has to explain a beta. But my theory is because display and video are deemed a passive engagement experience versus a more direct and personable inquiry that triggers a search ad. So they're attempting to be mindful. So thanks, Google. The ADH solution offers insights, but the aggregate cohorts, they're limited in comparison to traditional log-level data. It groups users into 50 people per segment. Google Ads Data Hub is telegraphed as what to expect in a world without user IDs, but immediate access to that beta remains closed even now. Saying that though, I've noticed maybe past few weeks, past few months, the beta discussions, probably coinciding with that September announcement, they're starting to expand and kick up again. And we're working in tandem with our clients to procure access. This is something we expect to get our hands dirty with as Google feels more comfortable rolling it out. But given where it's gone so far, I'm not super sad we haven't got to play with it yet. Still, sticking on DoubleClick, but with a different type of solve, using identity resolution. So Google allows various players to act as market research vendors, certifying their ability to capture data at the time of exchange exposure. During that exposure, they can identify a person as it aligns with their identity graph data. They can also populate macros to identify campaign hierarchy. Second one's super key. We still get those DoubleClick aggregate files when they kill the user ID, and they have these corresponding match tables that align with the macros we're populating for my previous example. So that means we're still able to replicate that same type of user-centric measurement experience associated with campaign-driven taxonomy that the data transfer service has always offered, or at least well until September anyway. But going forward, we have a solution that performs at parity when compared to that. Now, the big one. So up until January, the DoubleClick ID redaction was maybe the biggest thing on marketers' minds. And, well, then Google announced they were going to kill the cookie while they were at it, and concerns deepened. I have to personally admit to briefly panicking. Like them or not, cookies have been foundational in enabling web commerce for decades, and moving away from them is a big deal. It takes an entity with a combination of market share and leadership to steer this type of event. If you think about it, people have been talking about cookies dying for years, but none of that was ever real until Google did this. So when Google made its Chrome announcement, they highlighted a concept of something they're calling a privacy budget, I mentioned a little bit earlier, that would allow platforms to extract user attributes and information on a limited basis. They pinpointed a pretty easy, soft example of gaming. Everyone likes gaming, or at least most of us, citing a need for a frequent read on IP address to ping and calibrate for latency. Normally, privacy budget would only let that IP and maybe some other attributes get out so many times before Google cut it off and instead started sending noise or just sending back blank inputs to the server-to-server query that was calling for it. But this specific use case, they're saying, all right, because gaming, fairly white hat, feel free to leverage this privacy budget at a much greater expenditure. So using their, again, soft example, our expectation is that measurement and identity will also receive exceptions under the privacy budget, and that server-to-server calls without browser cookies allow us to extract the data required in a privacy-compliant way. So similar, just like application of identity resolution and macros paired with a cookie for today's solve that I mentioned on the last slide, I anticipate a server-to-server version of the same concept applying in the not-so-distant cookieless future. But each of these solves, they each have limitations. You're going to have new tech platforms, new legislation, new social angst, and any one of these could rear their head tomorrow, 2021, or beyond, and that will separate us from that ideal and measurement we so aspire towards if we're locked into one particular approach that only solves part of the problem. So do we listen to digital publications that tell us measurement and attribution is dead? There's a lot of that going around on LinkedIn. Are we all headed back to the last click or kludgy contaminated mixed models of the past, sometimes present? Or is there another alternative, maybe a holistic approach with the flexibility to incorporate different granularities of data, align them all at the same subatomic level, and govern them by a consistent set of rules?